Hi guys, I'm back to do a quick lecture on joint ownership concurrent estates for real property. It's good for the essay portion and also the MBE portion. Now, joint ownership concurrent estates consist of a JT, a TIC, and a TBE, and these are joint tenancy, tenants in common, and tenants by the entirety. Joint tenancy rule: when two or more people hold a single unified interest in a property with a right of survivorship. Very important on MBEs, this right of survivorship. You need to know when it's severed and so forth. Okay, I'll talk about that. Now, they have an automatic right to survivorship. So at the death of one of the JTs, the other JT automatically becomes the owner of all the interest. Okay, so if we have JT, let's say we have JTA and JTB, and of course we know they have a right of survivorship. I do ROSS. I do this every time I do an MBE with this, so I can get this. ROSS, we know that A and B have right to survivorship. So let's say A dies. As soon as A dies, B becomes the owner of the entire interest. And it gets tricky when they start saying A conveyed their piece to so-and-so. But that's how it works. They have an equal right to occupy. This is going to come a little bit later. Both tenants have the equal right to occupy. If one tenant does not allow the other tenant to occupy, then that will have a ouster on that one tenant. And I'll explain ouster in a little bit. Okay, so equal right to occupy. Equal shares, two parties are going to have one half. So A, one half owner, B, one half owner. If we have three parties, it's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay, that's on the JT. Now, the creation of JT is mnemonic PIT, P-I-T-T. It's actually possession, interest, title, and time. JT requires the 4 unities. You do have to write this up on your essay. The 4 unities are quick 4 unities because we have more things to write about, but this needs to be quickly jotted down. Time, title, interest, possession, okay? And the language you're looking for is ROSS, right of survivorship, okay? Time, is there an interest created at the same time of the parties? Same title of the parties? Interest, identical, equal interest. Remember, they have to be equal, 1/2, 1/2, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Possession, same right to possess. They must possess the same rights to the property. Now, the severance of the JT, this is done. This is there are so many of these on, I'll put a heart because it's just remind you guys, so many of these on MBEs. You have to know when a JT is severed, okay? And you got to go over those facts slowly and make a diagram. That's usually what I do. Okay, a conveyance automatically severs the JT. So if A conveys their piece of the land or interest to C, now we have C and B because it has severed the JT, and when it's severed, the JT will turn into a TIC. You have to remember that. It's no longer, it'll be a TIC, which we'll talk about tenants in common and their rules later. Okay, but if the JT is severed, you have to remember, if it's properly severed or legally severed, it turns into a TIC. It's no longer right of survivorship. Now, a will, so conveyance does sever the JT, which will make it a TIC. A will cannot do with the JT. So you cannot do a will with a joint tenancy. And that's usually a joint tenancy cannot be devised by will. Any attempt is void because the descendant's interest is extinguished at death, since his interest automatically transfers to the surviving joint tenant. So not going to work. Okay. A mortgage is split. You have to know the split here for the mortgage. So let's just say one JT decides to mortgage their portion. Okay, if it's a title theory, and if it doesn't state this, you have to write both on your essay, but if it's a title theory, it does not sever the JT. If it's a lien theory state, it severs the JT and becomes a TIC. So a title theory state does not sever the JT. A lien theory state severs the JT and becomes a TIC. Okay, so you have to memorize those and write both of them up on your essay if you don't have them. Usually the MBEs will tell you which one they're using. Both theories. Okay, if foreclosed, severed, sold. So basically, the joint tenancy is severed if the mortgage is actually foreclosed and the property is sold, okay? So it is severed but it has to be foreclosed and it has to be sold, and that's going to be severed from the JT. A lease, courts are split to the severance of a lease, so write on both the majority rules on that, okay? Courts are split to a severance, so we really don't have a definite answer on a lease. So a conveyance will sever the JT, move on to a TIC. A will, you can't do it with the JT. A mortgage is split, so if it's a title theory, it does not sever. And if it's a lien theory, it severs, and we move on to TIC. Now, if it's foreclosed on and sold, the joint tenancy is severed, okay, if the mortgage is actually foreclosed and the property is sold. Have to memorize that. Let's get my mouse on. Let's go to tenancy in common. Remember, if it's severed, we move on to tenancy in common. The rule is 2 or more own a property with no right of survivorship. The elements are no right of survivorship, equal right to occupy, non-equal shares are okay, so it can be 1/2 and 1/3 share, it's fine, non-equal shares are okay. A co-tenant may sell, will, or gift his interest. Tenancy in common, you may sell, will, or gift your interest. Tenancy by the entirety is similar to a JT, but only between the spouses. So they do have right of survivorship, but it's only between married spouses, a husband and wife, JT, okay? Not recognized in community property states, of course, because we use community property law for that. Neither tenant can unilaterally convey their share or break the right of survivorship. They can't do it. Got to be agreed upon. May only be severed by divorce, death, or mutual agreement. Cannot sever it on your own. It needs to be severed by both agreements, divorce or death, okay? Okay, the co-tenant general rules. These are very, very big on MBEs. Possession and use of property by one co-tenant. So we have co-tenants, and what are the rules for them to use the property? Here. So let's talk about those. Each co-tenant has the right to possess the whole property, but no co-tenant has the right to exclusively possess any part of the property. You can't say, hey, I'm possessing this entire home, and you're going to have to move out. You're not allowed to come back into it. Because if that happens, they consider that an ouster, and then it would have to be taken to court. Okay, so each co-tenant has the right to possess the whole property. We talked about that. No duty to account for profits and losses. So they don't have to account for profits or losses either, co-tenant. A co-tenant in possession has no duty. So let's say they're in possession of it. They're in possession of the estate. The tenant in possession has no duty to account for the following items. Okay, no duty to account for rental value of his own occupancy. Doesn't have to give a half a share or anything. No duty to account for any profits retained from own land. So their profits from its own land, no duty. Exception is like mining. Exception is like if they're mining things from their land and selling them, then they would have to give a share to their co-tenant. And another exception is they're renting to a third party. These are big on essays too. Renting to a third party, then the rents collected from the third party must be shared with the other co-tenants, okay? If not, the co-tenant can go ahead and actually seek contribution. So each co-tenant is solely responsible for his own losses from his use of the property and may not seek contribution. So that's important. No contribution for his own losses from his use of the property, his own losses, and cannot seek contribution from the other co-tenant. So you do have to remember that there's no duty for rental value of his own occupancy, no duty for any profits retained from the land, except if it's like mining, then they do have to, and then they can seek contribution, or rents collected from a third party, they do have to share with the other co-tenant, or that co-tenant may seek contribution as a remedy. Those are a lot on MBEs. Rules just need to be memorized on how to use those. An ouster, this is what I've been talking about. If a co-tenant has refused occupancy to the other co-tenant and claims an exclusive right to the possession, this is considered an ouster, and the ouster tenant can bring an action to regain possession, okay? Once they're ousted, they can bring an action to regain the possession. Ouster meaning they're not letting them come on the property at all. Now, an ouster does not mean if that person does not choose to go on the property because they want to live somewhere else. That is not an ouster. The tenant has to actually refuse occupancy to them, okay? So read the facts on those. Accounting, payments made, taxes, mortgage interest, co-tenants are responsible for their share. This is so much on MBEs and it's so hard for me to memorize. I don't know why. But taxes and mortgage interest, a co-tenant are responsible for their share of the taxes and mortgage on the interest, or mortgage interest on the property. Payments in excess of share, let's say they make more than their share to the taxes of the mortgage, they may seek contribution from the other co-tenant. Improvements and repairs are split on here. no right to reimbursement for improvements, but they can seek contribution for necessary repairs. Let's say they needed a new roof. That's necessary. It's considered necessary, then they can seek contribution. But if they just made improvements around the house, buy a new refrigerator, you know, fix the sink that was leaking, I mean, those, they can't see no right to reimbursement, because those are not really, well, the sink would be necessary, but like putting a piece of a tile that was misplaced or things like that. Okay, so only necessary repairs can they seek contribution. And you see that on essays where they want you to write on both here. And a partition, that means the party is divided. Let's get this on here. I didn't finish this one, partition, because I wanted to. This occurs through voluntary agreement or judicial action if in best interest of all the parties. And you'll see it. You'll see it on essays. It'll say that the courts wants, you know, wants a petition or they don't, or just the parties do. If the property is divided or ordered sold, then the proceeds are distributed. So the accounting on that, each party has a right to have an accounting and being reimbursed for taxes or repairs paid in excess of that proportion. And a partition is not available to a tenancy by the entirety, only joint. Let's write that down. Available to JTs, not available to a TBE, a tenancy by the entirety, which we talked about. Only joint tenants or tenants in common, also available for TIC. And that's partition. So that's where they cut a piece of the land, okay? An encumbrance. Now let's see what happens with the encumbrance. Did I have that on here? No, let's write that down real quick. An encumbrance. We know what that is. I have lots of lectures on those too. An encumbrance is a mortgage or a lien or an easement or a real covenant, things like that. Okay, encumbrance. A co-tenant may encumber his own share of the property with a loan or judgment lien, but may not encumber the share of his co-tenant. That's very important. Let me write that here. A co-tenant, I've seen these on MBEs too, may encumber his own share. So he may go out and get a loan, a mortgage, or a lien. It might be a lien, okay, on his part, but may not encumber the share of his co-tenant. So let's say he goes out and mortgages his part of the interest he has, the 1/2 interest he has, okay? Well, A mortgages the 1/2 interest, B is not part of that. So the courts believe that he's just doing the encumbrance on his own share, and he cannot encumber, so they cannot go after the lien holder, the mortgage holder, go after B. Let's say A dies and B has the right of survivorship, and they're going to try to go after B for that. No, because that was part of A's own share. So that's what the courts consider that. You need to memorize that because, like I said, that's big on MBEs too. I've seen a lot of that. If you do a whole bunch of them, you'll get the concept. So let's go ahead and add a slide and do my approach real quick. Remember, my approaches are for the essay portion. Of course, you want to start off with your rule. What type is it? What type? Oh, I'm sorry. The rule. What type of co-tenancy is it? What type of, let's say, joint ownership is it? Type of joint ownership. Remember, there's 3. There's the JT, the TIC, and the TBE, okay? And then go through each element of those. So if it's a joint tenancy, you have to go through the creation. You have to go through, is it severed? And then you move on to your TIC, okay? So TIC, you need to memorize those also for like the non-equal shares and all of that. And they may sell, will, or gift. Tenancy by the entirety, go through those. Now you're going to go through the co-tenancy general rules if needed, which you usually do. We talked about those. Each co-tenant has the right to possess the whole. No duty to account for profits and losses. Exceptions, if you're going to do like mining, and if there's rents collected by the third party, then they can ask for contribution, okay? Let's see, and then you're going to go ouster if needed. Ouster, remember what ouster is? And then go through the accounting. Now, a lot of the essays have accounting. So do MBEs though. So is the taxes and mortgage interest payments made with the general rule? May they seek contribution on that? Improvements and repairs. Okay, remember it has to be necessary repairs in order for them to receive contribution? Is there a partition involved? Is there an encumbrance involved, which is a lot of MBEs? Encumbrance, I love this word. Encumbrance involved, then you're going to explain what's going to happen there. Do they encumber their own share? And if is there a lien, what's going to happen if the right of survivorship is in effect? Okay, so rule, what type of joint ownership is very important. There's 3 of them. Co-tenancy general rules are for all types of ownership. The ouster, the accounting, partition, encumbrance. Counting, I see a lot of accounting ones on essays. Essays, accounting, okay? I've seen ouster on essays. I've seen, I think that's it. The co-tenancy general rules too, but mostly the MBs are on the encumbrances, the partition, and the type is, a lot of it is on, is the right of survivorship severed? And you have to know a mortgage, does a mortgage sever that depending on the, is it a title theory or a lien theory, all of that stuff, okay? So that's pretty much how you write up your essay on joint ownership or concurrent estates, and does help you with the MBs also. Next video is going to be on, I do have landlord and tenant to go through, so that's what I'm doing next, landlord and tenant. I've already done easements. I've done real covenants for you guys, so go ahead and check out my other videos. These are not perfect videos, but this is how I remember my stuff, so I just make the videos. I watch them at night religiously. It just sticks in my head, so that's how I do this. And I hope it helps you guys too, and I'll see you on my next video.